Welcome back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina, Zone 8A. Thought it would be fun today to do a little bit different kind of show, one that is more a view from what's on my design desk rather than what's going on in my garden. Today's project is very early on in the concept phase. We are looking at arrangement of elements on site. And that is one of my favorite things to do, thinking about the experience that someone is going to have from the start of their driving onto the site, where they park, how they come to the front door, the whole sequence of approach that determines their first impressions and how they feel when they arrive. Let's dive in. This residence is on a private lake, and the house is oriented towards the lake, but all visitors come in essentially the back. So what I'm thinking through today is how to make that experience really pleasant for them. The owners, you can see, are going to be parking here, but we have a couple of different options for where we can have the guests park. There's room for 2 cars in the covered carport, and they have this as a back out option. However, they would like to be able to fit at least 3 more cars for guests. So we are reevaluating this. This option here gives space for 3 more cars. And this was the owner's initial idea when I arrived on site this week. Have the cars come pretty much right to the front door. And I said, well, we could do that as long as we give this right here that I'm shading is planted bed space. And this is planted bed space, 10 foot worth. That would be just enough to give you a buffer to pull cars. There are really no windows with a view this way, so that wouldn't be a big deal. A tree here, and this is the option for backup and pull out. This would work. With the slope of the site, we are going to need a retaining wall in here because it slopes like this right now down to the front door. Here's front door. And we are trying to carve out a flat spot. Here's the wall that would be required to hold back the earth. So this is an option. It would be maybe the most efficient, quickest way to the front door, but this retaining wall is going to cost some money. The second option that we discussed was to leave owner parking down here and have guests park up near the road. So this makes it convenient for the owner still. We can leave this general outline for the drive, but the guests can simply pull off up here. This is the existing roadway here. So our challenge is giving enough for 3 cars. 1, 2, 3. This means we have to mess with the grade of the hill as little as possible. We actually save ourselves from needing a big retaining wall this way. These people can use the real estate of the road that already exists as their spot to back up. And now we have an opportunity to do some really nice plantings in here. We could do some nice big trees up here that flank the owner's entrance. Some big evergreens that make it feel like you've really arrived here. We can give these cars a screen. And one fun thing we talked about was to make an arrival sequence that comes from these cars and loops down towards the front door, so that these guests, which don't necessarily need to be all the way up here, and they could drop somebody off here if they needed to, get to walk through a garden on the way to the front door, and the owners have saved a lot of money on retaining. So you can see here, I did a couple of versions of the path. It took me a minute to get an angle that I liked, and I'm looking at the contour of the land as well and trying to work with that along with what is going to make sense for these cars coming down. But the idea with this one is there would only be a small retaining wall, if any, and these people who are occasional visitors would get to walk down from their parking spot through a garden environment, down a beautiful path, through trees, through an entry little plaza. The family has a couple of antique millstones that have been in the family for generations, and they want to use something in the garden. It would give a spot for that. There could be some planters out here. Definitely wouldn't have to. This could be a spot for a bench or 2 benches to have a little seat in the trees. Again, the main attraction is out here. This is the lake. So most of the lounging, sitting is going to be with a view out this way. However, that entry arrival sequence for the guests is something that could be truly special. And I think this could be both a solution to save money and make that experience more unique. Also in this version, you can see I reversed the back out area over here, and it solved a lot of problems for me that I was running into with having that push into the garden and the path area. So this is also a relatively flat piece over here. We won't be losing much to have them do that. It just makes this all work a lot better. It can be pretty confusing to look at things just in plan view. My next step for these clients is going to be to just do a perspective sketch of how both of these would feel with the front of the house. This is a front view of option 1. Here are the guest car spots. Sometimes this would be an empty pea gravel parking court and the owners park here. You can see how that would feel. Well, of course, if it was really in perspective, the cars would be up here actually blocking some of the view of the house, but it works. It's a nice solution and a great option if that's the direction they want to go. I'll skip the process of drawing the second option here and go right to the finished result. It's a little bit hard to see with layers of trees here, but this gives you a very general feel of be winding through this garden environment. There'd be layers of trees that you would be walking through before finally approaching that entry plaza with a millstone inset before arriving to the front door. This final image is the two options side by side. Now, these aren't incredibly polished drawings by any means. They just took a few minutes each to do. And this is on the level of what I would do for a client. I showed the client these pictures and walked them through pretty much this exact same reasoning. And I'm not sure what they're going to choose, but this was enough to give them the feel of each of these two different options. You can clearly see the differences between the two and some of the ramifications just by a quick 10-minute sketch for each of these options. This was a different kind of video today. If you are designing something for yourself or you're interested in design, I hope this was helpful just to give you a window into my thought process and how I would approach a design problem like this one. I hope you all have a great week.